aside for artists and whatnot. There's no financial platform around the world that is not asking for my friend Mamadou. The way in which he talks about financial structures, financial modeling, is truly stratospheric. It is on point, and sometimes it's so futuristic to where it makes people uncomfortable, which means he's a disruptor. And that's what you need in this day and age. You need to have disruptors to make sure that those that have been either disenfranchised, those that want to grow, that they have a champion, a catalyst, and a model to help them along that journey, both small as well as large. He's worked with prime ministers, CEOs, he's worked at the World Bank, worked for large corporations. And he knows why I'm smiling when I say large corporations. We worked at the same corporation. But he's someone that I have mentored, somebody I've coached, but it's also been reciprocated. And we look forward to just doing so many business opportunities together. So without further ado, I want to invite you to the stage, Mamadou, to be able to razzle and dazzle people. One thing that I will say, expand your mind. That's what this summit is about. We're going to bend the mind, stretch it. When you're talking about gold, blockchain, investments, growth in emerging markets, and I would dare say a lot of rural areas that we have, and even some urban that we have here in the United States, is considered to be emerging as well. Looking at banking and lending, it's a completely different model in which you need to start developing. So, oh, that's me. I thought it was a movie behind me. So I'm going to exit, and we're going to bring Mamadou on. So 20 minutes.
Thank you so much, Tina, for the great introduction. I wasn't sure who you were talking about, but I would love to meet that guy. Really. So yes, indeed. I've known Tina for quite a long time, and I'm not sure why she's not mentioning that big corporation of ours where we did rub shoulder for a few years, which was GE, indeed. She was on this side of the world, also in the finance team, right? Finance leader. And I was on the other side of the world in Africa as a managing director in charge of investment and project finance before I left that corporation to effectively ventured in disruptive entrepreneurship. So let me at least tell you a bit of my story so that you get some context here, right? I'm from Cameroon. I was born there. My parents migrated at some point to Europe, to France, and around high school I arrived there. My dad arrived in France as a clandestine, right? And then repatriated the family, including my mom and then me. There was a turning point in my life, which was between mid-high school and senior high school. So the principal called my parents and said, your child shouldn't stay in this school. My mom was a bit worried because she said, look, you can't fire him, he's top of his class. So she started kind of questioning and think maybe there was some racism in school, and the principal cut us straight and said, look, no, nothing to do with that. Your child is extremely bored. You need to send him to this special school in Paris. None of my parents went to college, so they were not very familiar with that environment, but that special school, I think 2 or 3 out of 5 French Nobel Prize came from that school. And my life changed when I got into that school. First, because I was the only black kid in there. So that was a very interesting experience. And of course, before they arrive at the starting of school, they've done the whole program. So that was a double shock for me. But I felt a lot of pride, of course, but I also had a sense of, I felt some injustice. I felt some injustice because I was, okay, there are so many people back home in Cameroon or in Africa that are so much smarter than me that will never get this opportunity. And for me, I made it a point from that day onwards to dedicate my life and the things I do to create equal access to opportunities, regardless of place of birth or wealth at birth. Starting my first NGO, I was 18, bringing African students across Europe and students of African descent to collaborate and do mentoring program, training, etc. for young Africans in Africa who would want to come and study or build libraries back in Africa. Fast forward, graduated, master's in finance, worked with KPMG, then investment banking, BNP Paribas, Fortis, actually doing mostly mergers and acquisitions, government advisory, privatizations, and so on. And I was lucky and privileged because at that time, when all my friends from school went to Goldman, JP, Morgan Stanley in New York or London, I wanted to really spend time in Africa, right? And not be a number cruncher in a tower glass somewhere. But I learned so much then, and I learned so much from entrepreneurship, from entrepreneurs. I understood how hard it is to start a business. Not just crunch numbers and see how they merge, like how hard it is for African or black entrepreneurs who were raising money in Africa and around the world to effectively get attention, credibility, and support. And it got me to think about the finance world, right? Fast forward, I was called after by the World Bank IFC in charge of investment in telecom media technologies, where I made the first investment in mobile money, mobile payment as a way to disrupt the banking system. When you don't have enough roads, forget the banking penetration, right? You're gonna have to go tech. And people didn't really understand or believe me at the time. When I invested in the first one, was in South Africa, and the next one was in Kenya called M-Pesa, which was a mobile money where you would send money, where you get a microcredit directly on your phone and so on. Today, M-Pesa, that app, moves 40% of the GDP of Kenya. That's how technology leapfrog. The same way, my first investment was in GSM, telecommunications. 25 years ago, it doesn't make me younger. And it helped Africa leapfrog from fixed line to mobile. We didn't have fixed line, literally, right? In a country like Nigeria, where you would have 300,000 fixed line for 150 million people, we moved straight to mobile, and 15 years later, you had 80 million mobile subscribers. So that thing about finance and technology, for me, was something very critical. And as I looked into it, trying to understand, okay, why is it so hard to mobilize capital, right? And I looked also at basic numbers. Africa's GDP, $3 trillion. Global GDP, $87 trillion. Do you know what's the underlying the underground resources value that Africa has underneath its feet? Anybody want to take a guess, a wild guess? Exactly. It exceeds largely $100 trillion, right? India might be not even 10. China probably 15 trillion. So when people tell me Africa is poor, I'm like, wait a minute. What is poverty? Africa is wealthy. But Africa is illiquid. And that's the paradigm shift that was critical to unlock for me. And when you look into that, the whole point, since I'd been in tech for a long time, blockchain for me was the solution. Why? Because I would see so many junior mining companies coming to the continent from America, from Australia, Canada, UK, get a concession for $50,000 and go to Toronto, Sydney, flip it for a couple of $1 billion without having to dig a shovel, right? So the whole point was, okay, how do we create equal access to opportunities once and for all? How do we democratize wealth? And how do we ensure that you don't get penalized that way? Another issue was currency depreciation, right? So for you guys, the world lives in dollars. For us, we live with nairas, Kenyan shillings. It doesn't mean much to you, but I'm going to tell you, it keeps on depreciating, right? And I would go travel and see my friends, and they'll be working very hard, but their wealth will be divided by 2 after 1 year, regardless of how much they worked. That's pretty unfair, right? So, in the meantime, gold gained 500% over 20 years. And guess what? We sit on 48% of the global gold deposit. Something ain't right. And in the meantime, just this year, gold gained 30% to the dollar. So point for me was very simple. How do we tokenize those assets, fractionalize ownership, and put it in everybody's hand as long as they have a mobile phone? So that's how we created Ubuntu. Ubuntu means I am because we are. It's a very profound African philosophy that reminds us the power of community, of collective, and that we don't exist in isolation. And it's because of that Ubuntu that I kindly took, and I thank Michael and Tina for inviting me, because I have a responsibility towards the community to share the word. And if I made that commitment to create equal access to opportunities, everyone in this room should be able to benefit that opportunity. When you look, let's talk again about Africa is poor, right? Do you know what's the size of the middle class in Africa? According to McKinsey, Lions on the Move report, it's 330 million people. You will never see that in the news. What you will see is a few starving kids with a fly in their eyes. It's almost the size of the population of America. Out of 1.4 billion people, 300 plus million belong to middle class. So there is so much wealth, so much potential that is completely untapped. And the point for me is, how do I bridge that gap? And I've heard this morning a lot of very powerful comments, powerful statements. How do you bridge such a gap? That's why we tokenize gold in the first place. We extract the gold, we put it in vaults in different locations around the world, and we issue a digital certificate of gold ownership available from as low as 10 cents. We have our wallet on App Store, Google Play. You can pay with credit card that gold. If you had bought our gift token in January this year, whatever your savings, if you put them in that gold token, you would be 30% wealthier That's the game changer. If you had it in 2019, 5 years ago, you would have doubled your money despite COVID. So, I know Tina gave me 20 minutes because she knows I'll go 30, so I'll go 30, okay? So, so basically, why is that a game changer and why did we choose gold? Yes, we have 80% of platinum. Remember I told you finance is not working for everyone earlier, and that's why I chose finance. Now, you need to go back to understand some very fundamental principles of finance. It's based on two things: asymmetry of information and collateral. Collateral, here we have farmers, right? If you go to the bank, they'll say, if I'm going to lend you money, what do you give me in return? But if when you go back in history, you got freedom without assets, it's hard to get out of the poverty trap. Second thing, asymmetry of information. I know something that you don't know that I'm going to buy knowing that it will go up. So, let me give you an example. Did you know that gold gained 500%? No. Did you know that it gained 30%? No. Now let me shock you further. Lithium. Everybody is big on electric cars, right? It gained 600% last year. And it's going to go 900% per year minimum for the next decade. So there's some form of asymmetry of information here. Some people know, but somehow they make sure that nobody else knows. Knowledge is power. That's why on our app, UTrab Wallet, we've built an Ubuntu Academy for financial and digital literacy, where all the key opportunities are there for everyone to benefit. Because you'll see all types of things on CNN, Fox, but not this. What are you most interested in? This? Or what happened next door? Thank you. Right? So, this is the point why it's very important. And when you talk about asymmetry of information and collateral, I was discussing this morning. Let's say you're a farmer, right? Basically, you have two issues. If you go to get a loan on the back of your land, you're going to be asked for two things. You need to inject a bit of equity. That's the first trap. Because generally, when you come from a not-so-wealthy family, equity, you don't just bend and get it. Right? Second, you're gonna get a loan, but they'll take your land in return in case you can't repay. Guess what? Why do you think the biggest real estate owners, not just in America, around the world, are bank and insurance? Because a few people have defaulted. Right? And you don't really have a choice. What if you had the choice? What if we put the system upside down? Right? What if we use technology the same way as Africa has used technology to leapfrog, but technology to collaborate? Technology to decentralize. We're getting towards a decentralized world. So, tokenization is the act of digitally representing a physical asset. But because you've tokenized that asset, you have the possibility to fractionalize it. Right? Let's say gold. What we've done, GIFT, which is our gold-backed token, Gold International Fungible Token, is 1 milligram of gold. So I know you guys count in pounds and stuff, but let's say, so in pounds, that would be 2 millipounds. I don't know if she says that in English, but you can't carry that, right? It's 10 cents. But you can move it. And it records everything because it uses blockchain. Now, what about we tokenize shares for a farming product or project? I can issue fractionalized shares and call upon the community to subscribe. I don't need to go to the stock market. It's over. As long as somebody has a telephone, a credit card, they can buy your shares from everywhere they are. And what is beautiful with blockchain is that it keeps traceability of all transactions immutable, so that they can go and claim at any given time that ownership. Now, think of this. You need $5 million, right? You do something broad to the community, in equity, let's say, right? And you have 5,000 people who put $1,000. You got your equity. And it's distributed. So you don't have a painful shareholder. You have a community of supporters. One. Second, debt. Okay. The bank wants this certain percentage and has a 70-page loan agreement. You can't do this, you can't do that, you can't do this, etc. So literally, you're limited. But again, if you issue a tokenized bond, okay, well, you have 5,000, and that distributes, let's say, 5% interest. And you have 5,000 people who subscribe $1,000, you got 5 million equity, 5 million debt for your project. And each of them have a digital certificate of ownership of shares or of bond, and then it repays them. But what it becomes even more powerful is that you've created an ecosystem where the community is also your customer. They all have a vested interest for your success. It's no longer me against them, it's all of us together. That's Ubuntu. Why? It means, what does it mean? It means that if your sales might affect the probability of them being repaid, they will call people to go and buy your product. You get the game changer here? That's Ubuntu. And we've based it on our ancestral African values. Enough with the divide and conquer. The world is getting decentralized, and the technologies allow us to work together in a trustless environment because it secures the trust for us to do what we are supposed to do. Now, another important thing. Let's say there's not enough people here in this community to reach. You need 20 million next time, 50 million. You're going to have to get a broader outreach, right? Good. You've had a track record already, but something has changed here. You don't have to spend $500,000 plus I don't know what kind of compliance to go to the NASDAQ or New York Stock Exchange or anything. But more importantly, since you need 5 times more, you can reach to a broader community. Remember, I told you, Africa's middle class is the size of America. And they would be more than happy from their phone, that middle class, to help you fund your project and have a piece of productive land in America, because they don't have as many investment opportunities back home. You got an army behind you. Never forget that. We are family. And it's happening slowly. And it will happen more and more. Because what was not possible for us back then, I learned, by the way, I didn't go to a university to learn blockchain. That's the other thing. I learned it from under a coconut tree back home in Abidjan. True story. Internet gave me that. You know what blockchain and Web3 is going to give me? From that same coconut tree in Abidjan, I'll be funding projects all over the world, starting here. And when you look at this whole paradigm shift, you now understand the power of numbers. You now understand the power of technology. Because you've been made to kind of go in that direction like sheep, like we have back home. But suddenly, a whole universe of possibility has opened to us. Before arriving here, I was in New York. And I stopped there on my way to Monroe. And so I went to Wall Street. I was with my, my colleague who's our CEO for North America, Ramadan Amin. He's from Arkansas, or Kansas, sorry. And we went to see those guys. They're the leading player in tokenization and Web3 in America, and therefore largely around the world. The meeting lasted 42 minutes. The thing they said before we left is, say, why don't you take our platform, we give it to you, you white label it, we partner so that people in Africa can invest here. They're not stupid. Neither are we. Right? And open to partnership. But we knew that. We knew it was coming. Now, there's another important thing when I say collateral and finance. We all know the American economy is going to face a lot of challenges, right? Related to the currency, to inflation, possible financial crisis. Not highly probable, let's face it, right? Okay, either you'll be watching CNN or Bloomberg and looking at all the stocks falling, or you'll understand that we're entering the next commodity cycle boom. We are entering that. And where are the commodities? Back home in Africa. That's why I'm here. You know, there was this this formula when they say, look here, look here. All I'm telling you is look there, look there. Why? Because when people don't want you to look somewhere, it means that there's something very interesting that you shouldn't be seeing. And you know why I'm saying that? I'm a former IFC. So there was this thing called, from The Economist, said the hopeless continent, 20-something years ago. I was about to die when I saw that. And at IFC, we knew that as much as the media was talking about the hopeless whatever, we had the highest internal rate of return on the planet as a region, consequently for 2 decades. So knowledge is power. Collateral is key. We have the possibility to make this collateral available to anyone in this room in a disintermediated manner. Moral of the story, we have worked, and you'll see that platform. We're very excited to be offered this partnership, of course. Is the world has become very small. Very, very small. But yet, some people who should be talking are not talking yet. And that has to end. Why does it have to end? You were talking about this, I was hearing Merafit sharing the story of why she always had to be the ultra best. She was the only black black person and female in our curriculum. I went through similarly the same thing. When we arrived in France, my dad told me, look, son, you're gonna have to be twice as better as anyone else. I said, why do you say that, Dad? He said, you kind of have the wrong color, come from the wrong country, in the wrong place. So somehow you're gonna have to shine, but shine big, because if not, you won't be spotted. So I worked hard. But there's one thing that happens when you get to the top, it gets lonely. And I'm gonna share with you a small story. The reason why I missed my flight to Monroe yesterday, I'm still here though, excuse me, Tina, is I kind of stepped out to address something at the airport, and when I came back, the queue was like limitless. So, you know, in Europe, I would just say, excuse me, and then people let you go. So I did that. It was working up to a certain point. I got very, very far in the queue. Very far, like, you know, like 20 people before TSA. There were 500. So I was proud of me to a certain extent. I thought I would get all the way till the end. And then there was this strong, powerful guy. And I said, excuse me, I really, he said, no, man, what's wrong with you? No, you got to stay behind me. He was a brother. And I said, brother. He said, I don't give a flying, right? So it didn't kind of work. And I was like, this is why we're not getting anywhere. It didn't cost him anything, literally. But the idea that I could pass him, it did not. And it got me thinking, right, there is a value system that also needs to shift, right? And I've learned one thing. So Tina watching a watch, meaning that I've exceeded 40 minutes already. So basically, it's only with that Ubuntu values and philosophy. It's only by understanding that we're stronger together. It's only by also being curious and go beyond the noise of what we hear to kind of go deep in the truth of what is that shall emerge collectively. And for me, this point of tokenizing assets, this point of being open for us as a community to support one another. For sure, some people will not go. But when they start seeing it working, it's going to be a landslide. You know what it takes? Just 3 people in this room to start something. I was talking to a brother from Black Cotton and the project that he has. You can easily deploy that for hemp, for cotton. The world needs it, right? Let's start a pilot. You can tokenize a fund, because most of the time, for instance, yes, you can get government support, but it says you have to match. Okay, if you don't have it, instead of knocking at every single door in the wrong doors, just tokenize it. Open it up and ask everyone to put 1,000 in there. And then you match and you keep going. And then you even have the model where it all sustains itself. So my words to you today, to close, is luck is when preparation meets opportunity. I think for the first time in 400 years, we have a unique opportunity to create shared prosperity, to create equal access to opportunity, to effectively grow together. If you want 1 year of prosperity, grow a grain. If you want 10 years of prosperity, grow a tree. If you want 100 years of prosperity, grow people. Right? And at the end of the day, Martin had a dream, we have a mission. It's up to us. Thank you.